Wonder what happens if I go pew.
Counterspell. Now the DM has to fight his way through your dungeon.
All right. Are you ready?
Hey.
Howdy.
Hi.
How's it going?
My name is Mason.
And I'm Jeremy, and you're listening to Once Upon a D20's Beginner's Course on Dungeoneering. Welcome to CCR 101, Ability Scores.
There are lots of factors to consider when you're making a character. What class will you play? What will your character's race be? Let's set these and the many other considerations aside for a second. Just kind of talk about the fundamental aspect of character creation that all of these have in common. That way, you should hopefully be able to understand the basics of creating a character before you have to wrangle with everything else.
We'll be covering the individual classes and the basic races in future videos. I suggest you check those out when we finally get those up. The whole point of our series here is that we want to break everything down so that you're not overwhelmed with the litany of choices that you are going to eventually have to make.
The root of character creation, I would argue, and some people will come at me for this, is ability scores. There are many ways to get your ability scores these days. You can use the point buy system. You can use the standard array of numbers, which is probably the simplest method. And there are a lot of people that will advocate for both of these methods, understandably. As for, me, I personally am the biggest advocate of rolling your own stats.
I have to agree because it's the best way to give you a more kind of personal set of numbers rather than everybody having the same balanced, exactly the same kind of stuff. It is on your DM to make sure that nobody is too far ahead or too far below anybody else, and that just comes with being a good DM. But as Matt Colville loves to say, players like to roll dice.
What truth? The process of rolling, thankfully, is at the root of it simple enough on its own. You roll 4 6-sided dice, right? Maybe steal them from your parents' Yahtzee set if your parents have one, and if you know what Yahtzee is. If you're too young for that, leave a comment below, and Jer and I will probably feel sad and a little bit old.
That's okay though. Yahtzee is an old man's game.
If you don't have Yahtzee, because you're just not about that life, maybe go get yourself a set from a local comic book store or D&D store or hobby shop. A lot of places have them. You can also find them online. I have amassed a fair list of respectable dice purchasing establishments online.
This isn't even on my dice.
And if you're not about any of those options and you'd rather just not do that yet, that's understandable as well. D&D is big enough that Google has made a dice roller. There are a litany of other dice rollers online, also for free. And then also, if you like using D&D Beyond, which I'm going to go ahead and plug because I use it in every campaign and love it with all my heart and soul, D&D Beyond within the past year has also equipped itself with a fairly capable dice roller as well. If you just ain't about that physical dice life for whatever reason, be it financial or something totally different, there are a host of other resources for you to turn to.
Once you roll those 4 dice, add up the 3 highest scores. For example, if you get a 6, a 4, a 2, and a 1, throw away that 1 and add up the others to get a 12.
Now, many of you are probably asking me right now, why on earth am I throwing away the 1, Mason? And it's a fair question because it seems strange, right? Like, why roll a dice if you're not going to use it? The answer at the end of it boils down to the fact that 5th edition is kinder to me and you than some other past editions are, right? If this was original D&D, we would run each ability score in order, and you would roll 3 dice, and you would take whatever the sum was, and that was it, right? So you didn't get to decide your class before you rolled. You rolled, and then your rolls on some level decided your class for you. And if you got a 3 or heaven forbid a 6, you either just clenched up and move forward with your likely brief existence as an adventurer in that particular D&D campaign, or you sent that particular character away to the happy farm upstate. Whatever the case, 5th edition is nicer, because now we get to roll 4 and throw away the lowest. So statistically speaking, odds are fewer that you will need to send away your favorite furry thief boy upstate to the ranch.
Anyways, we're digressing. The whole point is that you repeat the process 6 times and you get your 6 ability scores. The majority of them are not going to be lower than 8 or too much higher than 14. If you've got a couple of lower, a couple of higher, congrats. You've got a slightly different, hopefully well-rounded character that you're going to have fun with.
Next step after you've rolled is to actually apply these ability scores, right? There are 6 abilities in the game of Dungeons & Dragons, 5th edition.
These are Strength, Dexterity, Constitution, Charisma, Wisdom, and Intelligence. First 3 deal with your character's more physical, external capabilities, while the latter 3 are more the mental acumen, if you will.
Strength deals with musculature and athleticism. If you want to be Hercules or Heracles, depending on which way you want to pronounce that, if you want to be Thor, if you want to be the Hulk, if you want to be Gilgamesh, if you know who that is, if you want to be Beowulf, if you know who that is, if you want to be any of these guys, make sure that your strength score is high, right? Because otherwise you're not really Heracles. If you're going to be playing an ancient wizened wizard, though, and you're just not about that life, and you think that your guy's probably more of like a shriveled hag and that just does it for you, go for it, my person.
My dude is now seen as a gender-neutral term because...
for real?
Have you not seen what the old show? It's like, he's a dude, she's a dude, they're a dude, my cat is dude, my sink is
I have
dude.
not.
Dexterity, meanwhile, deals with your character's agility and coordination. Do you want to be like Legolas from the movie version and acrobatic and fleet of foot and able to shoot a bow really well? Or maybe you want to be a thief, sneak around, pick pockets from a whole bunch of fools that cannot detect you. Either way, dexterity will be important for you.
On the flippity flip, if you want to be a barbarian who's just constantly gleefully stumbling into combat and into any kind of trap or problem that faces them, go ahead and make dexterity one of your lower scores if you're just wanting to take hits. There are a lot of people out there that will advise you that that's not the smartest move for a barbarian, but it's your game. You do you. Yeah, traps, man. Sometimes you're just walking down the road and bam, the floor falls out from underneath you. Turns out you're a dungeon. Now you've got 2 poles sticking out of your stomach. What are you going to do? Probably die because you didn't save your cleric when you had the chance.
Unless you have a high constitution score, because even if you are low dexterity, if you have a decent constitution, you're going to have lots of health, rarely get sick, and even when you get stabbed, you're by the traps that pop out of the wall and skewer you, you'll probably be able to be okay because you're probably going to outlast the world. But if you're not especially worried about taking hits, maybe you have a really high dexterity, or maybe you plan on sneaking away to hide behind your especially burly friend, then Constitution's probably not as important.
Now, we arrive at the first of the internal scores, Charisma. A lot of people assume that having a high charisma means that you're an extrovert or an apex lover of the night, or just the biggest socialite in the universe. If you want to be any of these things, give yourself a high charisma, but also keep into account that this is not all that charisma amounts to.
A terrible dictator who exerts control over the people around them through force of presence or huge, intimidating words and actions, those people also have high charisma. It's not just about your gift of gab or being a pretty boy, which you can be too, but it more reflects the presence and the strength of their persona that they exert on other people and the world around them in general.
moving on from charisma, we come to intelligence and wisdom. And we're going to take a second to differentiate those two, because in real world conversation, intelligence and wisdom are kind of two sides of a similar coin, right? That is on some level the same case in D&D, but the distinction between the two is important, right? Wisdom, for example, is kind of your proverbial street smarts. It reflects intuition and capacity to read and kind of understand the vibes of the world around them. A character with high wisdom usually knows when crap's about to hit the fan and is faster to react to it than most people, usually. Also, they're harder to lie to because they have that intuition. Generally, they're better at kind of understanding the people and interacting with the animals around them. And wisdom characters are cool.
Intelligence, meanwhile, reflects a totally different understanding of the world. Wisdom, as he said, was street smarts. Intelligence is book smarts. Giving a character high intelligence, you're more likely to know the weird historical esoteric facts, the obscure arcane truths, or religious knowledge of like what that demon is or what they might be weak to.
That said, intelligence doesn't necessarily mean that you know how to apply this knowledge, right? A nobleman or something of a sage might recognize that a lion is a lion because of books that they've read and pictures that they've seen depicting that particular character. But that doesn't mean that they know what to do about that, right? Like they may not know, like, oh, I need to pierce the spot between the clavicle and the specific artery, and bam, they're dead, right? And even if they did know that, they might not be dexterous enough to use that to their advantage, right? So like knowledge of something and the application are two different things.
To review, strength means you can lift more and punch harder.
Dexterity means that you can sneak, dodge, and pick pockets faster.
Constitution means you can take more hits and drink more poisons.
Charisma means that you use presence and presentation to affect people. And if you've spent any time on like D&D TikTok or D&D memes or anything of that kind, it's also what you'd want to use to seduce the dragon.
Wisdom helps you understand the world around you.
Intelligence helps you understand esoteric facts.
In theory, you've already rolled up all these scores, but wait.
We'd recommend that you hold out, all right, until, we roll out the episodes dealing with the particular class that you want to deal with. Just because, it's better to have more information than less when you're making these decisions.
Some of the classes really rely on very specific ability scores so that you're good at what you're supposed to be good at. Wizards, very high intelligence. Barbarians, generally they lean on their strength. You don't want to be a super intelligent barbarian unless you actually want to be a super intelligent barbarian. It's your choice.
We're here to give you the information so that you can make an educated decision on this particular matter, whatever the case. We hope this has been useful and or enjoyable to you.
Good luck on your adventures. Keep going.
And watch out for dragons out there. I've thought about playing a bard purely so that I could have a reason to like sing during D&D.
You've got a voice, dog.
Thank you. I try, man. I try.
I'm going to play a bard again. Definitely. They're so versatile, and I love them.
Honestly, probably the best class in 5th edition.
You're not going to hear an argument from me.
Yeah.
I've been one. It's like being a wizard and a cleric and a frontline fighter, or at least a tertiary fighter, all in one. Right.
I want this behind me so I can like. Well, hello there.
Love sack out.
Meanwhile, on the flippity flip, just pivoting like that. My goodness, if I could clap with this broken wrist of mine, I would. Anyway,
please don't break your wrist any further. Please, Mason.
No promises.
As they say,
No,
be
you're right.
healed.
The root.
Praise be his name.